Ein herzliches Hallo zur neuesten Folge des wehorse-Podcasts. Sommerzeit ist auch immer Turnierzeit und falls ihr es noch nicht wusstet, es gibt ein wehorse-Turnierpaket. Reitvereine, Ställe und so weiter können sich bewerben bei uns für ein attraktives Turnierpaket. Wir haben dort tolle Ehrenpreise, die wir euch zugutekommen lassen. Und die Bewerbung ist möglich bei uns auf der Website unter wehorse.com/blog/sponsoring oder wenn ihr das so nicht findet, einfach bei uns auf die Seite kommen, wehorse.com, ganz nach unten scrollen, da gibt es einen Menüpunkt oder einen Button, besser gesagt, auf dem steht dann Sponsoring, dort draufklicken, das Formular ausfüllen und mit etwas Glück seid ihr dabei und die Glücklichen, die ein wehorse-Turnierpaket ergattern. Heute im Podcast habe ich einen höchst interessanten Mann zu Gast. Er widmet sich der Ausbildung von traumatisierten Pferden, Problempferde könnte man sagen, und dort auch spezialisiert auf Hengste unter anderem. Höchst interessant. Ich habe ihn getroffen vor einigen Monaten auf der Equitana und er hat uns einen Einblick gegeben in seine Arbeit, was er macht. Er ist auch ein Newcomer in Deutschland, war viele Jahre unter anderem in Dänemark. Viel Spaß mit dem Interview mit Will Rogers, das ich mit ihm auf Englisch geführt habe. Also, los geht's. Another episode in our wehorse podcast, and I'm delighted to have an Australian trainer with me. He's also part of the 2019 Equitana Hop Top Show, and he's a trainer of troubled horses, also of stallions. Welcome, Will Rogers.
Thank you very much.
You are a dressage trainer, specialized in horses that maybe didn't have a lucky past. What's your work? How would you describe the stuff you do?
Well, I suppose, you know, as we've started in our careers as horse trainers, you know, you start wherever you are and then from there you have to navigate a course of sort of like finding your way in the industry. And so coming from Australia, we have to sort of learn to train all different horses to make a living. And so I started off with Western horses and training cutting horses in Australia, and also starting a lot of young horses and working with problem horses. And throughout that journey, we started to realize that people pay you to train the horses that they don't want to ride, essentially, because they've got problems, or they've, you know, don't know what to do, or the horse is really good but now it's not working, or that sort of thing. So that is something that has sort of shaped my journey in learning, kind of thing, and has sort of gotten me to the point now where I'm sort of moving out of sort of training problem horses and moving into helping people get the best performance out of their top horses. So I'm helping a lot of the best Grand Prix riders with Piaf training and with helping get their horses to where they can perform in the big environment. And
big environment meaning big horse shows?
Yeah, like, you know, big international Grand Prix, or whether it's big outdoor shows, that sort of thing. And just sort of generally helping people understand their horses a little better. So that's sort of where it's sort of gone. And these shows, like the show that I'm doing here, is sort of trying to demonstrate maybe my ideal, I suppose, trying to show the horse is a beautiful animal and that the horse can perform in a difficult sort of environment but still be able to be beautiful and not elegant, so stressed, kind of elegant, yeah. And because I think really when it comes down to it, a lot of times I think it's forgotten sometimes that the horse is the core of everything. You know, we're all here, Equitana, it doesn't matter what event you go to, whether there's money and sponsors and this and that, and that's all part of it, but we're all here for the horse. And I find that the horse themselves, if you wins the crowd, you don't need to be the big famous guy that, you know, I think it's the horse that...
Horse in the center.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
How did you initially came in touch with horses? What was like the...
Well, I grew up on a farm in Australia, and we had some horses, and I sort of learnt to ride in a unique way. My mum didn't really know how to ride much, but she could ride, and we learnt to ride out in the middle of nowhere. We had stop and turn and go, and we'd ride out in
the outback.
Yeah, basically. And so it was kind of nice because like you didn't have any rules. You didn't have to follow any instructions. You didn't have to wear a helmet. You just were basically doing whatever you do. Now, in saying that, I didn't know anything, so my poor horses had to put up with a kid who doesn't know anything riding them around. But from there, it sort of enabled me to be open to learn whatever came along. I wasn't kind of taught a whole lot of things and then stuck in a way of thinking kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you said that you also worked on with cutting horses.
Yeah.
So also with cattle and,
Yes,
and kind of like the Western style.
Absolutely. Well, like it's funny because from the age of about 13 till 22, that's all I did. Like I was a professional cutting horse trainer. I worked for the best guys in Australia, and then I went to America and worked for my hero over there, a guy called Lloyd Cox, who's like one of the best riders of all time. And
from the Western sport.
Yeah, like he's earned, I don't know, like $8 million in prize money. And I really followed that. I wanted to be the best cutting horse trainer in the world. And that was my big aim. And then I got there and I was working with these guys, and I just realized that they weren't really loving what they were doing. And I just realized
they were not loving what they did.
I think they would sort of, it lost its charm, it had lost the magic to them. It was just another day at the office, and I thought, I don't want to spend 20 years getting that good and then feel like that. So I had a really good friend of mine, a guy called Tristan Tucker.
Big trainer, very renowned in Europe as well.
Yeah. He and I met very early on. He was riding dressage horses and working with problem horses. I was riding cutting horses, and we worked together a bit, and we just hit it off. We thought the same way. He was the first person I'd met that I was like, this guy has a way of thinking that I like, and I hadn't met anyone, even the best guys in the world hadn't had that thought process. And so he kept calling me in Europe and saying, you need to get over here. We could do a lot of cool things together. And
because he was already in Europe.
Yeah, he was.
And you were still in Australia.
No, in America.
In America,
yeah,
true.
I was in America, and so then I came over here with him, and we sort of started from the absolute bottom, and we were driving around in a car, working terrible horses all over Denmark. This was in Denmark at the time, and we just gradually clawed our way up into getting better customers, better horses, and then things sort of progressed from there.
Why did you switch from the Western sport to dressage?
Well, that's a good question because my initial, if I'm honest with you, my initial experience with the dressage world in Australia I was not impressed, because you got to remember, if you're a cowboy and you're grown up in that culture of men being men and that cowboy kind of lifestyle, being around good horsemen and that sort of thing, when you see, and this is not trying to take a big shot at the dressage industry in Australia, but there are a lot of kind of scared old women riding their horses around not particularly well. And I thought, also with a bit of a attitude, that they were very important and everything. And I just wasn't impressed by it at all. Wasn't impressed by the riding and that sort of thing. And when I came over to Europe, I saw some of the good riders, and I was like, whoa. And then when I think the big turning point for me was I saw Totalis in Aachen with Edward.
At Vertraal with Totalis at the world's biggest horse show, Aachen.
Exactly. And when I saw that, it just mesmerized me. I felt the German audience, everyone, I don't know how many people they seat there, but thousands.
I think it's in the dressage stadium, 6,000.
Yeah. And I just felt like everyone mesmerized by that, and I thought, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. And so that was sort of the turning point for me, because I just thought, this is the highest level of riding in the world, and that's what I want to do. So yeah.
Probably it was one of the world record breaking rides.
Yeah, exactly.
Like they were on a winning streak back then. And they had a couple of shows where they hit world record after world record, and basically in Germany, it got a huge boost to the dressage scene, because everyone that is not involved with dressage also got in touch with it, because he was on the front page of all the papers, and that was huge back then. So that was for you the turning point. And okay, I want to get in touch with classical riding, dressage riding.
Well, I don't mean this in a sort of offensive way or a rude way, but like I think the German riding is amazing in terms of like the best riders in the world. Most of them are Germans, and the system is incredible. But I tend to like, I'm a huge fan of Lorenzo. You know, I think Lorenzo's an amazing horseman, amazing trainer, amazing showman. And I'm a huge fan of Isabel Worth and many other riders and people out there. But I also feel that I don't particularly believe in the system of thinking or riding or training. I believe in is the horse. And I think that across the board, you've got like, Isabel Worth doesn't do everything in the book. You know, Lorenzo doesn't do everything out of a system or a book. There's that understanding the horses, and like I feel that the special people in the world all have one thing in common, that they all have these lines that cross over where their training is based around the way the horse learns and thinks, and they understand how to get the best out of a horse. And so I'm really looking for that. I don't care where it comes from. That's what I'm into. Like I find there's people who say they do classical dressage, there's people they say they do horsemanship, and they're doing whatever they're doing. So I feel like there's so many varying degrees, but the truth always is in the horse and the results. Like if you see someone riding beautifully, you can't fake that, you know, like that, it's too difficult. So like I take bits and pieces from everywhere. Some of the best things I've learned are of people who are unknown and no one cares about them. And I've gone and taken that knowledge and helped some of the best riders in the world, and they think I'm a magician. But I got it from a guy that they wouldn't want to learn from. Does that make sense? So it's like trying to collect the best from everyone.
And connect the different worlds, because probably a dressage rider would never get in touch with the Western rider about a particular problem.
No,
wouldn't he?
No, that's right. And I think what I would like to sort of encourage people to look for is when you're watching people around, I think there's like, you have to see what people are doing well and try and understand how they do it and whatever else. And if there's things that you don't like or don't believe in, you don't have to do them. You can just go, well, that's a good example of something that I wouldn't want to do. But I do like the way they did that, so that you don't discount valuable information, you know? Like sometimes the thing that you really need comes from someone that you don't like, you know? That can sometimes be the case, you know? I think... yeah, if that makes sense, kind of thing.
Is that a problem that maybe, especially in dressage, we sometimes stick too much to the book and have the rules and regulation that has always been there? It's kind of like an evolution over the past 200 years somewhat. For sure. And we don't look to the left or to the right?
Well, I think like the structure from, you know, say the German system is fantastic. There's a lot of great things in it. But then there's a horse that you might need to do a bit of this or a bit of that, and you have to go off the main path to get that and kind of thing. And so I think like it's sort of like art, the art of riding and feeling and sort of feeling your way, and then the sort of structural, systematic, approach, really organized. Neither of them, in my opinion, are enough. You need to find out how to get somewhere in between, and sometimes you go too far to the left, sometimes you go too far to the right. But I think that's the real balancing act, and I feel like I'm on a long journey, and I feel like I'm only beginning, kind of thing. But the sort of thing in my mind, what I have sort of my sights set on is trying to produce world-class dressage horses that have a special look, so that you have very small aids or minimal aids that the horse is really doing it themselves, but the horse is also really performing because the horse understands that that's expected of it. So that you have this sort of finished product that is very effortless and expressive, and the horse has that positive outlook on it, without all the sort of the other things that come with it. And I think you sort of have to have that in your mind, because at this point I can't do it how I'd like to. I can have moments of it, but I also think with the riding, like with Vallegro, for example, you know, he dominated because he was a horse that demonstrated that, and it's not easy.
And he wasn't the typical dressage horse.
No, that's right. So I'm trying to think, and like I said, trying is the key word. I'm trying to think, what's the future of the sport going to be in 10 years or 20 years? Because I want to learn from all the best who are doing it now, and then try and be thinking in the back of my mind, where is it going, and could I get on the bus now a bit early and see if we end up at that point where you're at the forefront of the progressive sort of end kind of thing. Yeah.
Where do you see the sport and the way we school horses in 10 or 15 years?
Well, I think that it's going to have to go that way where people don't want boring, you know, unfortunately. So riding a safe, sort of nice, correct test is never going to win anyone any gold medals or take you to the absolute top. You'll be in the top level, but you won't. So people want to see something that makes the hairs on the back of the neck stand up, and they want to feel that emotion watching a test. So that high performance is always going to be the big thing. So the only thing is that people are going to want to see that high performance without the tension, without the tail swishing, the resistance, the fear kind of thing. And I thought Jessica and Benjamin's clinic,
Jessica van Breda Wendel and Benjamin Wendel, who had a clinic here on Monday nights, which was very
fantastic.
impressive.
Yeah, fantastic. And I thought they demonstrated really beautifully the way, you know, they're really sort of heading down a good path as far as obviously, I don't know, this is a bit my impression, they're obviously following a lot of the German system as such, but it's very refined. You know, they're sort of, to me, it has a more of a modern, elegant look. Small aids, very refined. Horses have a good expression, that sort of thing. But I think what's going to happen is the breeding is getting better and better. So the horses are going to be more and more extreme. But the only problem is that the ability to train those extreme horses gets more difficult, because from my experience, the horses that are the most athletic generally are very sensitive, and when they're very sensitive, they have stronger instincts and they're more intelligent. So when you've got all those characteristics, they're more dangerous, they're more easily frightened, and more easily learn the wrong thing, and more easily outsmart the rider. So I think the understanding of the horses to be able to produce those horses to where they can perform at the Olympics or in Aachen, for example, without tension and all that sort of stuff, I think that's going to be the real challenge, because breeders talk about like breeding that perfect horse that's got a perfect character and amazing movement and sensitive enough and everything like that. But let's face it, we're not in a perfect world, are we? You might get one of them in a million, but for the most part, it's not the case. When you get more of everything. It's like a Ferrari. You can't have the speed without the risk, and that sort of thing. So I think a harmonious, high performance sort of riding, with the finished product being the horses basically trained to do it themselves. So instead of riding the test and making the horse do it, I think it'll be more that the horses are so well trained that they sort of take ownership of the exercise more. They're trained to take more responsibility, kind of thing. That's my thought process.
It's probably the same trend we see with the riders' fitness, for instance.
Yeah,
at the
exactly.
moment,
Absolutely.
20 years ago, no one cared about
You
whether
drink
the
a beer
rider
and
is
have
fit.
a Bratsworth after the ride. And
Exactly.
Yeah.
And now everyone's talking about fitness and being like having the physical ability
Yeah.
actually to perform well
Yeah.
in the saddle. That's actually the same trend you would apply now to horses, kind of like in the next step.
Yeah,
Is that
that's right,
correct?
and that's a great point, and that's you've really hit on a good point there because you think about it, like if you want to sit effortlessly and not get in the way of the horse, you have to be fit, don't you? Otherwise, it's not possible to ride beautifully and stay out of the horse's way. So I think the dressage sport has the potential to really go in an amazing direction. But I think it's going to require people to take into account that the horses are going to get more difficult. They're going to be much, much, much better, but to manage their confidence and mentality and instincts, that's going to be more and more difficult. And I'm seeing that a lot. Like I work with a lot of the best horses, and they're so smart. Like the rider makes 2 mistakes, boom, the horse is already, cracks starting to emerge, you know?
Critics would probably argue against that the dressage sport shouldn't change. There has been changes to the FEI Grand Prix, which has been tested at London Olympia, where especially in Germany, there is a huge argument about whether things should change in dressage sport at all, because we've been talking about the future of the sport and how and where it should evolve. What would you hold against that?
Well, I don't think necessarily the format needs to necessarily change, but in terms of, I would like to maybe think that the judging would lean more towards seeing that high level. I think the most difficult thing to achieve in riding is high performance with a high level of harmony. That's the really difficult thing. And I think sometimes with the judging, you see horses being rewarded for really the riders just riding the test out of the horse, forcing the horse
Not with the horse.
No, exactly. And I think if we want the sport to be go in the right direction, I think that needs to be addressed, because at the end of the day, it's not, to me, and I'm not saying I'm perfect, you know, no one's perfect. I'm not saying that those people are terrible people that are riding like that or whatever. It's hard. It's really difficult. I understand that. But I think if they're rewarded for that in the test, it's not going to change. They're going to keep doing that. And I don't think it's the best way. And what I mean by that is like, from my experience, when a horse is doing something themselves, it's always better. You know, like if you go across and you want to do an extended trot and the horse goes, yes, I really want to go because I know it's my job, they always do a better extended trot than if you're making them do an extended trot. And I think that with the judging, like if you see a horse swishing its tail the whole time and chomping on the bit and really like struggling through the test, but technically it's right, I don't think you can mark that as high as people do, because I don't think that's the right direction for the sport, you know? I don't know if that probably didn't answer your question. I think I got off track there a little bit.
No worries. It did answer the question.
Okay.
At the moment, you are training troubled horses, for instance, stallions, that have been in the sport and in breeding before that no one really got along with. How do you, or why do you have the passion for troubled horses to actually bring out the best out of them?
There's partly a couple of things. It's sort of, you have to be better. Like horses teach you to be better, and like these, when a horse is damaged like that, basically whatever you try and do quite often isn't enough, you know? It doesn't work. So you're forced to learn the individual's troubles. You know, it's like, you know, I don't, like I was saying to you before we started the podcast, the big lessons I've got out of this is to start horses from the beginning correctly and to build in the information like a parent will educate their children to be hopefully prepared for the real world and successful. That's what I really believe. Now, in saying that, when you're working with a horse that's already damaged, it's obviously not the optimum situation, but you are forced into a situation where you either go, I can't do it, let's just give up on the horse, or you go, I'm just going to keep trying to figure this out until I hit the point where we're getting somewhere. And sometimes you have to be really repetitious, and sometimes you have to be more empathetic to horses that are complicated, and sometimes you have to figure out many things. But it has made me who I am, basically. So as much as I don't want to train troubled horses anymore, I'm happy to help people, but it's not my passion, because it makes me sad, actually, because you realize what the horse could have been if they hadn't run into it. And so probably one of the biggest messages that I want to put out there is that protect your horse from the beginning. And like, if you don't have the knowledge, find the knowledge, try and find someone that can help you, because my mission in the future is to have horses from foals and to create what I would call like a pure product, where if you imagine a horse that is so intelligent and so well educated that by the time you get to Grand Prix or that higher level, that horse can perform at its absolute best without any hang-ups. Whereas if you ask a lot of Grand Prix riders about their horses, they won't tell everyone this, or the public, but they'll say, oh yeah, he's really difficult with this and he's really difficult with that, and I can't do this and I can't do that. And they might have got that horse when they're 6 years old and they had all these problems over that first few years, and then they're spending the rest of their life trying to manage these complicated issues
and fix the problem.
Yeah, exactly. But you can't, like you said before, you can't fix them completely, because the neural pathways are wired up already. All you can do is try and replace them or go around them. And so, like, for example, if you have a really traumatic experience, a horse tends to go and flash back to that under stress. So, and what's complicated about that is you have to figure out, okay, he's going back to the trauma. How do I deal with this? Do I make it really difficult for him to behave this way, or do I try and be sort of talk him out of it and say, no, just come back over here. And you have to kind of figure out what's best. It's a complicated thing. It's very much like it's the same as human psychology. When someone's got traumas, you can't understand exactly what it's like unless you are them. It doesn't make sense. Like if someone's scared of, driving, for example. Like if you're a good driver and you relax driving, it makes no sense. But for them, they're crippled by that fear. And I think in the horse business, like you just realize we're in the business of we need to be in the business of understanding fear, because like when you come to a big event like Equitana, there's just so much going on, and for a horse, there's potential threats everywhere to them. And how do you,
and 24/7.
Exactly. Yeah. And how do you reassure them? Because I think one thing I've learned, a big part of it is keeping their energy levels, trying to keep them low enough, because of course, when you've got high energy in a highly stressful environment, you're just, the flight instinct is kind of building up, and they need to have that sort of release kind of thing. And if you don't release that energy as you're going, you'll get that built up sort of explosion, and then it gets through into their whole nervous system and their mind. And so really, there's a lot to it.
And you've been originally, as you said, Australia, then the States, and now you're in continental Europe. How come you opened a barn here for schooling horses in Germany? Why Germany?
Well, that's a good point. I didn't imagine that I'd end up in Germany, because my German is non-existent.
And especially you're actually in the heartland of the Westphalian horse.
Exactly.
And the dressage world, which is Warendorf.
Yeah. Well, it's quite unique. Well, initially we were in Denmark, then we went to Holland. I spent 5 years or so there. And then what I found in Holland was just the lack of space. Like, you know, when you're in a horse property, a lot of times there's not enough space to ride the horse out in the forest, or not enough fields, or it just feels a bit congested. And we're sort of looking around, and also where the trainers are and where the good trainers and horses and everything. And then we decided to make this shift to Germany, and initially we couldn't find the ideal place, and then we were really lucky to have some friends who helped us find the place where we are now, Monica Tudoresco's old facility. And
the German national trainer for dressage.
Yeah. And so it's really been great, because that place is fantastic in terms of it's really well set up for training horses, with 2 indoor arenas and good fields, and the owners are really fantastic people. And so I mean, what I do really like about this area is just the fact that there is that respect for the horse, and it's a horse country, isn't it? And
it is.
That's I've really noticed that going to the shows, that the audience just have such a deep appreciation for the horses, and I really like that, for sure.
When prior to our podcast, I tried to do a little research on you. I didn't find too much, though.
Under the radar.
Under the radar, but you have quite some ambitions towards the dressage world. At least I heard one of your grooms or colleagues saying that maybe you might be going for the 2020 Olympics in Tokyo.
Well, not Tokyo, actually. I'd like to. The horse that I brought here, well, I brought 2 horses, but Lanson, the horse that I've ridden in the Hop Top show, he's 7, and because it's Tokyo and then Paris, isn't it?
It's in 1 year it's Tokyo, and then in 5 years it's Paris.
Yeah. So he will be 12 then. So that's my aim. Like, this is a very special horse to me, and he's sort of got 3 gaits and very sensitive and good. So that's sort of where I'm aiming. And I sort of find one of the things I decided when I moved over here to Europe is, coming from Australia, it's a long way from home. You're away from your family. You're away from what I would say an easy, comfortable life, so to speak. And so I feel like there's quite a big sacrifice to sort of make it over here, so to speak. So I really have leveraged myself into thinking, I want to be as good as I possibly can be, otherwise I shouldn't be here. So I don't sort of care if I have to work myself into the ground to do it. And I'm very fortunate to have an amazing team working with me and that sort of thing. And so, like, Paris Olympics is something that I'm really like to shoot for. But at the same time, it's just sort of a bit of a mountain
to climb,
to work towards. Yeah. And I'm also working on a big Liberty team that I'm building. I've got 5 horses already, and then I've got another 4
for Liberty work.
Yeah, but it's going to be a show that is combining. I want to create a show that combines all the things that like dressage, show jumping, and a beautiful horses and a Liberty team, to try and combine a show that connects the sport people and just the horse lovers, and combine it in a way that everyone can really enjoy it. Because I feel that for me, there's art and there's high performance competition, and I want both. That's what I'm sort of striving for.
I like to bring down the Chinese wall, so there's sometimes in between them, right?
Yeah, well, I just sort of think, like, when you see, like, sometimes I think in the competition world, people will win, but if you ask them how it felt, they wouldn't say, oh, it was an amazing test. They'd be like, I had to work him through it, whatever. But that's part of the sport world a little bit. But on the other hand, you know, they're getting such high performance. You know, the horses are performing amazing. And then you've got the artistic, horsemanship / really having that connection and feeling for the horse, and just that being the focus. Of course, that's fantastic, but then the horses are not reaching their full performance capacity either. So that's why I really feel that if we strive for for both, trying to balance out what we need, that's the optimum thing. And that's also what I'm trying to do in these shows a bit. I want the horse to perform really well, but I want people to have that emotional feeling afterwards, kind of thing.
Which is the special thing about our sport.
Yeah, yeah.
At the end of every WeHorse podcast, we have the 4 classic WeHorse questions.
Okay.
And the first one I would like you to answer is, do you have a motto?
Do I have a motto?
Yes.
That's a good question. A motto. Well, I don't know. I don't know if it sort of would be put into a motto, quite like sentence sort of thing. But I think I'm trying, like I just sort of talked about it, I suppose, I'm trying to strive for that balance between the art and emotion and the high performance. That's sort of that's probably not really altogether a motto as such, but that's sort of what I'm working towards. And I also probably believe that not giving up and constantly improving yourself, that's probably a big thing that I live by. Because at the end of the day, we can never be good enough. You know, we can always do a little more, and just trying to keep improving, yeah.
Is there a person that inspired you, influenced you the most in your past? That's question number 2.
Can I say a few people?
Of course.
Because I have...
but maybe among them there's this one person.
I have a few, but for different reasons. I can say why. Like, Tristan Tucker is someone who... He's sort of probably my best friend, and he's had probably the biggest influence on me as far as my thinking. So I'd say him. As a performer, Lorenzo is someone who is a huge inspiration for me, because he demonstrates how one person can start out and take things to a level that is almost beyond people's comprehension. A guy called Lloyd Cox, cutting horse trainer in America, who is one of the most talented human beings on a horse I've ever seen, and he inspired me in that way that it needs you. If you're that good, you can just train. You can just be training, and it blows someone away. He sort of inspired me in that way, and there are multiple dressage riders. You know, Severo Lopez, the Spanish rider, and I mean Carl Hester, Isabel.
No, we have plenty.
Yeah, there's so many, but I'm a big fan of lots of people, because I believe that I want to be a fan of theirs until I'm up there with them, kind of thing. Yeah.
Then question number 3.
Or Elise, actually. Sorry, I put Elise in there as well.
Elise Fromont.
Yeah, big fan of hers as well.
She has been on the podcast. She has been podcast episode number 1.
Ah, well, there you go. Well,
exactly.
She's fantastic.
Question number 3. If you would have the chance to give one piece of advice to equestrians or horse lovers, what would it be?
Okay. Biggest piece of advice: prepare your horse for success. Start from the beginning so that your horse learns the right things from the beginning. Protect your horse at all costs. And that's all ties into the belief system of, if you do the right thing by your horse, it will work in the end, and you'll get what you want. It's not always the easiest way, by any means. It's not always the popular way. But I just really believe that's, if I could share that with anyone, because it always, whenever I've gone against my belief system in that way, it's always haunted me. But if you really stick to your guns, people are going to try and corrupt you or tell you, don't do this or do this or do that. Really protect your horse, build them up from the beginning, make sure that you're like a parent to them so that they can succeed, kind of thing.
Wonderful. And the last question is not a question. I want you to complete this sentence for me.
Okay.
For me, horses are.
An amazing creature that has probably taught me to be far better than I am, kind of thing.
Wonderful. It was a pleasure having you in our podcast.
Thank you. No, it's a pleasure.
And we are going to follow you closely in the future. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Will Rogers.
Yeah. Thanks, mate.
Bevor es ganz vorbei ist, der Hinweis für alle Interessierten. Wir haben einen Grundkurs Bodenarbeit seit neuestem mit der Expertin Waltraud Böhmke. Die Vorbereitung auf das Bodenarbeitsabzeichen der Deutschen Reiterlichen Vereinigung. Dort hat sich ja einiges getan. Neben den klassischen Dressur- und Springabzeichen gibt es inzwischen auch vieles weitere. Und das werden wir langsam bei uns aufbauen, bei uns bei wehorse, dass es einen ganz genauen, aufeinander aufbauenden Kurs gibt. Und wenn ihr mögt, schaut vorbei. Das zweite Video ist gerade live. Der Grundkurs Bodenarbeit mit Waltraud Böhmke. Bis bald.